Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast, a show created to be your go-to source for straightforward retirement advice. Best of all, it is presented in a language that you can understand. Are you ready for some straight talk on retirement planning without all the fluff? Well, you found the right podcast. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Greg Gonzalez.
Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Greg Gonzalez. My goal for the podcast is to help you live a better life in retirement by giving you the tools and information you need in a language that you can understand. Most listeners know that I am a financial planner in St. Louis, Missouri, with clients in almost 20 different states. Been doing the podcast almost 2 years now, and over the last 6 months, I've started to notice the popularity of the listenership to our podcast has really taken off. We've received a lot of emails and questions from listeners. And on today's episode, we're going to be highlighting some of the best questions that we heard from listeners so far. If you're a new listener, I want to encourage you to check out our website. Like I said, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. There's a lot of free resources that are available to you. If you're wanting to plan for your own successful retirement, you can download those right on the website. The next question came up in a conversation with a client that had rental properties, right? Residential rental properties, and talking about the taxation of these. And for those that aren't familiar with how rental properties work, one of the advantages if you own a rental property, let's just call it a 2-bedroom flat or something like that, that you rent out. This is residential here that I'm talking about. You can, as the owner of this rental property, you can depreciate the property over 27 and a half years. What do I mean by that? Well, it essentially reduces the amount of rental income that's taxable because you're depreciating the property itself. Now, what happens when you go to sell that rental property? Guess what? Well, there's depreciation recapture, which means, hey, all of that depreciation is going to come back at you. So you're not just going to have a capital gain based on what you bought it for and what you sold it for. That depreciation recapture will impact your tax situation as well. This particular couple just kind of wanted to be done with rental properties. They wanted to retire and move closer to their kids and grandkids. And I get it. Who wouldn't want to go to North Carolina? And then as far as selling their house, for a couple, as long as you have lived in your primary residence full-time, 2 of the last 5 years, there's a $500,000 capital gain exclusion. What does that mean? Well, let's say this couple lives in their house for 10 years. They bought it for $200,000. They sell it for $700,000. That's a $500,000 gain. Guess what? They don't have to pay taxes on any of that $500,000 gain because they had lived in the house as a primary residence 2 of the last 5 years. What does that mean? Well, if they sold it for anything above a $500,000 gain, yes, then the incremental amount over that $500,000 gain would be subject to capital gain taxes. Next question comes from Tim, and Tim wanted to know about the changes for 2023. Tim says that he is 63 years old and wants to max out his Roth IRA and his 401k next year. Did the limits increase? Pretty straightforward question. And yes, they did, Tim. Roth IRAs went up to $7,500 for somebody over 50. You can contribute up to $7,500 for each spouse if you're married. And keep in mind, there are income limits to that, so be aware of those. And then for your 401k, Tim, that actually went up $3,000. So in 2022, if you were over 50, you could contribute $27,000 a year to your 401k. But in 2023, because inflation has been so high, they adjusted all the tax tables and they allow us now to contribute $30,000 a year in 2023 to your 401k since Tim is over 50. So you do the math, Tim will be able to contribute $30,000 to his 401k and then another $7,500 to his Roth IRA. So that's $37,500 that Tim can save for retirement in 2023. So Tim, I hope that helps you. Again, $30,000 to your 401k, $7,500 to your Roth IRA for a total of $37,500. If you save that for retirement next year, Tim, you are an all-star. So good luck. I hope you can do that. I've got this a few times so far this year already, is as far as like the gift tax exclusion. And many of you have heard that maybe you have friends that will gift money to their adult children, or maybe their parents will gift money to them. Typically, people do this at the end of the year, around the holidays, Christmas time, that kind of thing. And you might have heard people say, oh, you can only gift up to $15,000 a year. And if you gift any more than that, you got to pay taxes on it. And this is a very, very misunderstood topic. So I wanted to kind of explain it a little more. So the annual gift tax exclusion, so for 2023, it went up to $17,000. So what that means is I can gift any one person $17,000 per year. I can write them a check or hand them cash, $17,000, and then I don't need to report that gift on my taxes. I'm not going to pay any taxes on that $17,000. Again, I just wrote them a check as a gift and said, God bless you. And then they, as the gift recipient, they don't have to report that $17,000 on the gift. Now, my wife, she could also gift the same person $17,000. And so that would be $34,000 that me and my wife could gift one single person. It could be our daughter. And if you're a married listener out there, you could gift $17,000 to one of your children, and your spouse could gift $17,000 to that same child. Nobody would have to report the money on their taxes. It's only if you gift more than $17,000 in a given year where you will need to report that gift on your tax return. It's just an extra gift form. It's reporting that you gave in excess of the $17,000 to any one person in a given year. So you're just reporting that to the IRS. You don't have to pay any taxes on it. They don't have to report it on their tax return that they received more than the $17,000. It's the person that does the giving that has to report that. So that's why you hear used to be $15,000. In 2023, it's $17,000. So a lot of the wealthy will gift $17,000 in a single year, and they'll call their tax accountant and say, hey, how much can I give this year to my children? What has the annual gift tax exclusion gone up to? And I know some of you might be thinking, must be nice. It must be nice to be able to gift all my kids $17,000 a year, each husband and wife doing that. But so I hope that is a good synopsis and summary of how the gift tax rule works. Next question comes from David. David said, Greg, enjoy the podcast. I have a question about the beneficiary IRA that I got from my mom. My first question is, how do I begin to convert this to my personal Roth IRA? Second question is, should I just cash it out and put it in my IRA and then do the conversions that way? That's what my sister did. Thanks, David. Boy, David, I would not want to be your sister's tax advisor next year if she did that. So first question, how do you convert this, what's called a beneficiary IRA that you got from your mom, to your personal Roth IRA? So you can't do that, unfortunately, David. It's a great idea. Oh boy, I wish they would allow you to, but they don't. So that's question number one. Unfortunately, you're not able to do that. Question number two is cashing out the beneficiary IRA and then just putting the money in your personal IRA. Well, there's going to be limits, contribution limits. And in 2023, if you're over 50, it's $7,500 is what you can contribute to an IRA and get the tax deduction. By removing the money from a beneficiary IRA, that's called a distribution, and you're going to be taxed on that. There's no pre-59.5 10% penalty. So if you are under 59.5, that 10% penalty will not apply to you or your sister. I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know what size of a Benny IRA we're even talking about here. I mean, it could be $1,000 for all I know. Could be $1 million. I'm just not familiar, and it wasn't in your question here. But yeah, you are unable to transfer a Benny IRA directly into your own IRA. The only way you can get money out of a Benny IRA is to take a distribution and pay the taxes on it. And if you were trying to offset those tax implications, you could, this is assuming you qualify, you're able to contribute to a tax-deductible IRA. And again, check with your tax advisor and your financial planner and all those people to make sure you qualify. But if you were over 50 and you took out, this is hypothetically here, took out $7,500 out of a beneficiary IRA, you're going to pay the taxes. But if you took that money and put it in your own IRA, that would offset because you'd get a tax deduction on the $7,500. So it would be a wash. If you wanted to put that money in your Roth IRA for $7,500, you could certainly do that as well, right? Just beware that $7,500 that you took out of the beneficiary IRA, that is going to be taxed as ordinary income. You're going to get a 1099 on it. And with these beneficiary IRAs, again, if you inherit it after January 1st of 2020, you're on the 10-year rule. So meaning you have 10 years to spend that down to basically take money out of the beneficiary IRA and pay the taxes and get it down to zero. If you inherited the beneficiary IRA prior to January 1st of 2020, you're taking RMDs, required minimum distributions, and it's a set amount that is determined every year. You calculate how much am I going to need to take for that year. You can take more. Certainly, you can always take more, but you need to really calculate and keep track of what that amount is that you have to take every year. David, I hope that helps. I would, again, come up with a game plan, and especially your sister, it might make sense. It's definitely going to make sense to meet with her tax advisor and make sure he or she okays her game plan, and even your financial planner. And the last question of the day comes from Cindy. Cindy said, Greg, on a previous episode, you talked about the tax map that you do for clients in planning their income taxes based on their retirement income sources. Can you explain that? I didn't catch what you meant by that. Yeah, Cindy, quite simply, just kind of boiling it down, what we do is we can kind of forecast what somebody's tax implications are going to be like in retirement. So we might, look at their sources of income and say, okay, you have Social Security income and you have pension income. And then last but not least, we're taking IRA withdrawals, and that's going to be taxable. Roth IRA withdrawals, as you know, are not taxable, so we don't include those. So we kind of map that out year by year, and we say, okay, given these assumptions, what is your tax map going to look like? Is most of your money going to be taxed at 12%? Is any income going to be then taxed at 22%? And if so, can we avoid that? So kind of we look at kind of what we call bumping the brackets, meaning, okay, we want to make sure that we're topping out that 12% bracket if at all possible. And if not, maybe we have a strategy to do so. What we don't want to do is we don't want to just take income and money out of accounts and just willy-nilly just pull money here and pull money there. And what that does is you're just jumping into the next tax bracket and you're going to end up paying more taxes than you need to. So you really have to kind of plan ahead. You don't have to, believe me. It's just we like to see people plan ahead. And that's what we do for our clients to say, okay, let's map this out and to say, okay, optimally, what is our strategy tax-wise for the next year? How much money is going to be taxed at the different tax rates? And if you're not familiar, the tax rates go 0, 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and then the top of the bracket is 37% federal. So as an example, we have a new client that decided to work with us just this year in 2023. He was newly retired and he said he was just paying, it seemed like so much in taxes, and he was. It's just he didn't have a tax map. He didn't have a strategy, and a lot of his money was being taxed at 32%. And we were able to kind of trim that back and come up with a game plan. So more of his money was taxed at the lower bracket at 24% instead of 32%. And that's an 8% difference. And I kind of joked with him, but I said, before you met me, you were giving Uncle Sam an 8% tip. And he laughed and he said, well, that's why I found you. So I hope that helps. Yeah, that kind of the tax map is just kind of just boiling it down and saying, okay, how do we pay more taxes at the lower brackets and less taxes at the higher brackets? And that'll save you money tax-wise. That's all I got for this episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'll see you next week. And remember, always dream big.
Thank you for listening to the show today. Check us out at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you want some help from Greg, submit your questions at the bottom of the page or sign up for a 30-minute retirement coaching session with Greg. We'll see you next week.